Michael Ginsberg, who I believe is in the center of your screen, is the co-founder of Legion Paper. In the 1970s, Michael concentrated his efforts to expand the availability of fine art papers in the United States by introducing new papers from around the world. One such paper that will be used in today's demonstration is Somerset, which was created in 1972 by Michael in partnership with the St. Cuthbert's Mill in England. Today, Michael will be speaking with master intaglio printer Tony Kirk. Tony Kirk has over 50 years experience with the craft of printmaking, including a broad background in curating and assembling exhibitions of great acclaim. In addition to teaching and lecturing, Tony has continued professional studio collaborations with some of today's most influential artists. So I want to toss this over to you, Michael, and enjoy.
Thank you, Mark. Before I turn this over to Tony, I just wanted to mention a few facts, if I can. I first met Tony, and Tony, if I'm wrong, you'll correct me, I know it, about 40 years ago when he was the master printer for a publisher, printer, Circle Fine Arts in New York City. And that was about 40 years ago. But he actually goes back 58 years in terms of learning the craft and printing and perfecting his craft. And he printed for some of the most renowned artists: Helen Frankenthaler, Wolf Kahn, Stella, Joan Mitchell, Kiki Smith, Donald Sultan, John Walker, James Sienna, Robert Kipniss. And today, Tony is going to be doing and pulling a print, from start to scratch, from start to finish, pulling a print by an artist by the name of Katia Santabañez. So hopefully we'll have time to get it all in. And let me turn it over and say hello to master printer and friend, Tony Kirk. Hello, Tony.
Okay, so the Somerset paper has watermarks at both diagonal ends, which is great because if you tear the paper in half, you'll get a watermark on both sides. And you can see the watermark here, Somerset. So I'm going to tear the paper, and I'm going to tear the paper from the back of the sheet. And measure about 14 3/4 is about the halfway. Then the straight edge, I line up the pencil points and tear it like this. Now my left hand is walking down as well, keeping the paper straight. That's a nice tear. It's almost like a decal tear.
Well, it's almost like a hand, yeah, like they do at the mill.
Yes, yeah. Some people, well, you can also make a more ragged, more deckled edge if you make the mark again. And run water down there like that.
What does that do, Tony?
Well, Somerset paper absorbs moisture very fast. It's a very short soaking time. Maybe 10 minutes is all you need. This softens the fibers, and then well, it doesn't make much difference, right? So now I'm going to soak the paper over here. And 10 minutes is all you need. I was using this paper this morning at an art center in Washington, Connecticut. We were printing on dry Somerset and with wooden spoons, and it printed beautifully.
Wow.
What we were doing was we're printing on dry paper with a lot of ink on the artist's plates, printing by hand with a burnisher or a wooden spoon, And then the second print, the ghost print, we dampened the paper and ran it through the press. So now,
Tony, you have a different way of drying the paper. You want to go through that? You want to explain that? That's not a blotter.
no, well, I'll come to that later as I dry the paper of the print, correct? Well, since Michael's asked me, when I pull the print, I staple it all the way down, maybe about every inch or two. And the paper dries flat overnight. Not only that, the ink dries because the air is on the ink. And I'll show you later how I tear this down.
Right.
Now, the reason I staple up my prints like this is called tri-wall cardboard. It's only on here for 24 hours. It's not going to damage the paper. Or you could paint it white if you wanted to gesso. And as I print my production during the day, if I'm doing 20 prints, I staple them all up and I see my consistency throughout the day. The old way I used to do it, and a lot of people do it, is print it, put it away under blotters with tissue paper right away, with weights on top. That's not a good idea, because what the weights do is they crush the line. Paper dries very slowly. You've got to keep changing the blotters every 2 days. And so as not to put ink on your blotting paper, people put tissue paper on top of the print. And now when you change the tissue paper, you see ink on the tissue paper.
Hmm.
I want ink to remain on the print. I don't want it to be robbed with pressure. And when we do the Mesotint, you'll see there's large areas of black in Mesotint. And when you put tissue paper down on a damp sheet as it's printed, tissue paper ripples like this. And the down ripple touches the ink. The upper ripple doesn't. And then when afterwards you pull out the print, and all the black areas, see this texture of ripples, and the print is no good. So what I do for blotters, I don't use blotters to blot wet paper, because those will get damaged, they'll get shredded, and be thrown out within a week. Save your money and buy bath towels. I've been in several shops where I've introduced bath towels, white bath towels, and then blot it. And then after a day or two, a lot of sizing will come into these towels. Then you can throw them in the laundry, use them again. So what I've done is, in preparation for the printing, I've made a damp pack. So yesterday I soaked several sheets of paper, and they're in here. So now I'm going to go over to start inking up the plate, okay?
Tony, what about when do you brush the sheet to clean off the dust?
Before I print.
Okay.
I'll talk about that, right?
Right.
You want to come over here, Andrew? So this is hot, but I'll just pick it up. So even Rembrandt used copper, right, for etching. And the process I'm going to show you today is really unchanged since Rembrandt or Durer's time. We're going to put on wax on the plate, and then I'm going to darken the wax, ready for printing, ready for etching. So how that's done, this is called ball ground, made of beeswax, asphaltum, and rosin. This is how I learned at art school. And I was very fortunate to be taught at Winchester School of Art by an artist called Norman Ackroyd, who is recognized as the most famous living artist making prints in England right now. And he taught me when I was 18, and he had just left the Royal College of Art. Now, a leather roller like this, you roll out the wax. Like this. Now the wax is the same color as the copper, more or less. But I'm going to do something which we did, which is European, and people do it here, but not so often. I'm going to smoke the plate. I'm going to make the copper dark, the wax dark. I'll just do a small part of it. These are tapers. They sell these, especially for what I'm doing, candles. I don't have any solvents around me. Be careful. And then I just darken the wax. So the soot from the candle is melting into the wax. I'm making sure that the actual end of the candle, the wick, doesn't touch. So I won't do it all. So once it becomes black like that, see, drawing through here, you can see the line, but not well. You can see it much better when you draw through black. You can really see what you're doing.
Right.
And another thing you can do is, once it's black, if an artist has a sketch, like a thumbnail sketch or an idea, he can use white Seurat or contact paper, and he can put it on here and draw a sketch on the wax with pencil. And the white contact paper shows up here, and then the artist can go in with a needle. So I'm going to put that aside. This plate here, I'm going to ink up now, is by Katia Santibanez. And she shows in New York at the DC Moore Gallery. It's a current project. She's in the country right now, up in Massachusetts, coming to visit me in a week or so. I mailed plates to her with wax on them, and she drew on them and mailed them back to me, and I etched them in acid. I'm not going to etch plates in acid for this demonstration, but now you see her plate. The ink I'm going to use is a domestic ink called Portland Black, made by Gamblin, an American company. I have my ink here. And I'm just going to turn the heat down a little bit and apply the ink.
Tony, does the plate have to be hot when you're putting the ink on?
Warm.
Warm.
Yeah, just like when you put oil in the frying pan and turn the heat on, the oil gets thinner, right?
Right.
So what the warmth does with the oil, it helps the inks flow into the line. In Rembrandt's time, he would use a mushroom-shaped leather dauber, and he would just put ink on all like this. I prefer these plastic cards. Now, when I was 18 and doing a drawing at art school with a bunch of students, my professor came by and said, "Tony, I like your drawing. That'd make a great etching." And I said, "Etching? Isn't that what Dürer, Rembrandt, and Goya did, the old masters? Do people still do that?" He said, "Yes." So he took me out of the class and introduced me to the etching teacher and got me set up. And that was my first etching, and I just loved the process.
Wow. You were 18.
Back in 1968. And then when we had a show and tell, what work we'd done that September 1968. Another professor who I did not have, but he came by and said, Tony, I like your print. I said, thank you. He said, I'd like to buy one from you. And after I picked up my jar from the floor, because I didn't know you went to art school to make art to sell, he said, oh, maybe $5, $10, right? And that kind of gave me a feeling of confidence.
Tony, what are you using now?
Thank you, Michael. This is a nylon, right? I rather use this than the stiff charlatan that's sold for wiping etchings, because that can scratch the plate. This is from a fabric store. It's called, in America, it's called Tulle, spelled T-U-L-L-E. And in Europe, it's called Tuile, it's T-U-I-L-L-E. And it does not scratch the plate. Then after that, I take it as far as this. And then, this is called hand wiping. This will make the line very crisp.
Are you doing that with the palm of your hand?
Yeah, like that. Or sometimes even that part there. This is a very time-honored way to wipe an etching at the end. Sometimes you can manipulate the tone, leave tone here. Tone is a very thin film of the ink I'm going to use. I will print this with some tone on it. So the areas which are not etched, like here, will not print white or clean paper. There may be even a tone there.
So this is going to be a combination of aquatint and etching.
No, this is just a line. This is the line etching. We're going to develop this probably with the artist with aquatint, which is a tonal process, which I'm not going to be able to demonstrate today.
Got it.
Aquatint, a method developed, and Goy was the first to really use it. Aqua, the word aqua should give you a hint to why it's used. It was originally invented to give tones like washes or watercolor. Aquatint. Then I'm going to put this aside. Actually, some people use a chalk wipe at the end to get rid of the tone. This is a magnesium chalk. Some people use the powder, but I don't like using the powder because it can sprinkle everywhere. I like the solid chalk like that. And this chalk in here will absorb more tone off the surface. In fact, for this demonstration purpose, I will just use this chalk in half the plate so you'll see the difference. You might be able to see the difference now in the camera. Right, I'm going to put that aside. And now I'm going to print a Mesotint by Robert Kipniss. A Mesotint, this is how it works. It has a texture in here, like mild sandpaper. And the artist will draw his image on it, and then take tools like a scraper and get back to white. If it goes back to the smooth copper, or using a burnisher, leave some half tones. That's why it's called Mesotint, half tone. So, I think of all Intaglio prints, the Mesotint is probably the most difficult to print for a beginning artist. It can print very dry or over wiped. You want to get all the tones. Now, this plate will eventually be plated. This can wear down for 5-6 prints. And the artist wants to do 20 copies. So my project, when this is finished, the artist will decide it's done. And write on it, the abbreviation is BAT. It's a French term, bon à tirer, good to pull. And that's my guide. And so I have to make sure that every print I do looks like the one. And I have that in front of me as I work. And as the prints are stapled on this cardboard, I make sure they all look alike. This is a Mesotint here by Robert Kipniss. That was the edition of 18. So you get a nice flat pad, like this, and wipe in a circular motion. And these will be ready to print in a few minutes. People say, when do you know you've done enough wiping? Well, when I see the image, when I see all superfluous ink wiped off, nowhere near finished. We were having technical difficulties earlier with the camera. Everyone can see what I'm doing, okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Good. So now I'm going to hand wipe. And I have a piece of paper towel here. So when my hand comes off, it goes on here. And the ink from here is wiped off my hand onto here. I once a couple of years ago on printing etchings, and I had a really nice personal way of ending the lecture. It just came to me as I was standing there. I said, you know, often during the day, I'm using carbon black ink, and my hands are black. And it reminded me of my father's hands when he worked on a coal mine. He would come up black.
Wow. Really?
And so I feel a connection to him in a way.
Wow.
Now up in here, the artist doesn't want a lot of tone in here. Wants that sky to be nice and bright. I'll take care of that in a minute. I'll show you how I do that. So this is tissue paper. And I'll put a little chalk on here and wipe off the excess. And then go in here like this. With my fingertips. Robert Kipniss comes here quite regularly, but with the virus, he is really in seclusion up in rural Connecticut. But I go up to visit him. I'll go up in a few days with proof of this. and he will look at it, and he will decide that if it's finished, maybe he wants to do more burnishing in here. He will look at it, and then he will say, I like it, it's good. Or he may say, can you wait half an hour? I want to do some more work on it. But if it's a lot of work, he said, you know, this is going to take me a day, so come back another time. And wipe. I will use the chalk. Then, this is a beveled edge. I'll take a paper towel and I'll clean off the ink from the edge. I've been collaborating with Robert Kipniss for maybe 15 years now. I printed many editions for him. Okay, so now we're ready to print these two plates. I'm going to the press now, Andrew. I'm helped with my son today with the camera, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. So come over here. These become extensions of my hands and fingers. I think the paper got a bit too dry. In printing etchings, you have to have 1, 2, 4 things to be right. Paper has to be the right dampness. The pressure has to be right. The blankets have to be nice and smooth, not too hard. And of course, I have to wipe the plate properly. So that I don't need to re-soap this paper. And I won't use a towel. I'll just use a paper towel. I don't want to get my white towels full of ink. When I tear the paper, sometimes little fibers of the deckled edge come in the water, and they are on the paper, and I can't see them. And when I do Robert Kipniss's Mesotints, the large black areas, I was getting tiny little specks of white, which I had to touch up later. I solved that problem by just giving the printing side of the paper a good brushing, like that. Now, this is the printing side. And this is my registration sheet here. This rectangle is for my paper, and that rectangle is for my plate. I can do 1 or 2 things here. I can engage the paper like this, and then peel it back, and then put my plate there. Or I like to use magnets in there. You notice I put a watermark at the bottom of my image. I think it looks better that way rather than have Somerset upside down on the top. Just a personal thing. Then I've had interns who worked with me and said, "Oh, you forgot the plate." I said, "I haven't forgotten the plate." A lot of students put the plate down first, then the paper on top, like this. This way, I put the paper down, peel it back. I see a hair there. I'll just brush that off. Come on. Now, Katia Santabanez's plate, it'd be very easy for me to make a mistake and print it upside down. So what I did is I put an arrow in the back. It tells me what's the top. And I put it down here in that spot. Like so. Bring the paper back down. Remove the magnets. And check my pressure. Oh, it's very good. Both these pressure gauges are set the same. All the way along. And then I can bring the blankets down, like so. This is called pulling the print, you see? It printed very nicely. I don't know if you can see with the naked of your eye, but this side here has a little tone and plate tone, and this is pure white here. So what I will do is clean this off now, and I'm going to put wax back on the plate. This is another of Katia's etchings, and she wants to add more lines. So I put more wax back on the plate and smoked it. Even though it's black, you can still see her previous lines, and she will add more drawing to this plate with a needle, scratching through the wax. Then I will etch it more. Now, how I dry this print? I'm going to do it right here, Andrew. This paper is at least half an inch wider all the way around than I need. So in some art schools, you'll see big boards with that brown packing tape on the walls where people tape it down. That's kind of messy. I'd rather do this.
Tony, this is an edition of how many prints?
Well, it's not been determined yet, but I think it'll be no more than 15 or 20. Usually when an artist does a large edition, it's probably a benefit print for a non-profit. And some well-known artists do that. And because it's a large edition, like say 75, that print will probably cost a lot less.
Right.
By the artist, if the artist did only addition of 10 or 15.
Right.
So now I'll go to the next stage. I'll leave that there to dry. I'm coming back here. This is a print that was already stapled, right? So what I'm going to do, this is how you remove the staples. I remove the staples like this. You see that print is bone dry and flat. And here's my template. This is showing the final margin. And to make sure I don't tear a print upside down and leave a small margin at the bottom and a large margin at the top, I've done a couple of marks here just to remind me what is top. And that fits nicely. So then, I'm going to put pinhole through here. And you can't do it on a hard surface. You have to have a soft surface so the pin goes through the paper. This is my way of doing it. My day's production is dry the very next day. The ink is dry. Paper's flat. And all the ink I printed stays on the paper. It's not offset onto tissue under weights with blotters, right? So have I done all the holes yet? Yeah. Then I'm going to tear from the back.
Why, Tony?
Well, you know what? I'll do one from the front so you can see the difference. So what I would do is I put the straight edge just behind the pinhole. So when I tear it off, the pinhole is in the scrap, not in the paper that's final. And then I'll walk it down like this. Now, if Andrew can focus on that edge, you can see the edge of my straight edge is like that. That doesn't look nice. Tearing it from the back, it looks much better.
Got it.
So you'll see a difference in a minute. Now, I don't usually do this with dirty hands, all right? So I have no time for me to go and wash my hands to do this. You get the idea. So compare that torn edge there, where I tear from the back, to that torn edge where I tear from the front. This is much nicer.
Right.
It almost looks like a deckled edge too.
Right.
This is now the time where I put tissue paper on the print and pile them up, wrap them up, and go and visit the artist for a signing. So now I'm going to print the Robert Kipniss print. So it's normal to have more margin at the bottom because it supports the print. If I was to tear equal margins all the way around and it was on the wall, the bottom margin would look narrower than the sides. It's just a visual optical thing. So like this now, I don't need to go and have an expensive mat cut to go over this print. This can go in a frame just like this.
Right.
Because the margins have been determined. So now I'm going to print the Robert Kipniss. I'll move this from the press. clean up this ink on here. I think this will be okay. If the top sheet, there was a dry one that got dry, I had to remix it. This will be fine, I believe. So since I have more margin here, I won't use magnets this time. I will just, it's called trapping the paper underneath the roller. Just by about an inch or two. And peel it back. Oh, didn't catch. Maybe an inch or three. Yeah, I feel it now. I can feel the pressure change as I went on the paper. I'll peel it back like this. Now, this plate had been sitting on the warm plate. Not hot, but I turned it off. It was hot to melt the wax, but for inking, it was just warm. And this is nice and warm now. And it will help give a really good print because the ink is loose. And this is great paper because Somerset, oh, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to brush the paper.
How many pounds of pressure do you use, Tony?
Oh, several thousand pounds here, I believe. Yeah.
And it's equal between both sides, obviously, right? Yeah.
Has to be, yeah. Right? This press I got with my first bank loan when I was just new in the United States. I went to the bank and said, I want a loan. He said, what do you want to buy? I said, I want to buy a printing press. I said, really? He asked me what I did. And I paid that loan off over 5 years. And it's been a great press for me. It's made in America. It's Rembrandt Graphic Arts.
Right. Now, this is a regular etching or an aqua. What is this, Tony?
No, this is a Mesotint.
Mesotint.
Yeah. This, no acid is used in this. It's not an etching, but sometimes the artist will scratch on the plate a drawing with a diamond point. That's a dry point. No acid. Mesotint is tonal. Mesotint. There's two other words I know in English: mezzo soprano and a mezzanine. That first 3 or 4 letters tells you the half tone. Mesotint, the half light, the half tone. And then there's aquatint. Then like Katya's plate, those are etched in acid. I use ferric chloride, which is not an acid, it's a salt, but it's corrosive. It gives off no fumes, no gas, but it is brown. It can stain everything inside. Just going to add a little bit more pressure to this.
No, why are you doing that?
I need a little bit more pressure for this Mesotint to get the tone. The line etching prints very easily, but if I don't have enough pressure, the tones can look a little bit grainy, a little salt and peppery.
Mm.
So. I can still print this with one hand. It's not that tremendous pressure. I mean,
yeah,
on here. Oh dear, my blanket creased. There you go.
Oh, beautiful.
If I had more time, I would have taken off more tone here, but I rushed it for the demonstration. That could be lighter. Or you might take the burnisher and go back in and remove this with on plate.
We're in the clouds, Tony?
Yeah, in the sky, in the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I print, people say, "Oh, do you have to ink it up every time?" Yeah, the ink has gone from plate to here. It's not like a printer. You press the button and it shoots out sheets of paper all black, right?
Right.
I had a great experience as a teacher once. I was teaching kids doing community college doing woodcuts, and as I walked past this young boy, I heard him say he was holding up a print. He just printed a woodcut with lots of ink. He could feel the ink make a noise as he pulled it off. And as I walked past him, he said, "My, this looks real." I said, "What'd you say?" "This looks real." And I said, "Well, I used to seeing ink on a carbon copy on a Xerox or an inkjet. This is real ink on paper." And he recognized it.
Mm.
Another boy once said to me, after he pulled his first print, he said, "My, I know I'm going to do this for the rest of my life." That's a great feeling for a teacher.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, like I said before, I was printing at monotypes this morning on this paper with wooden spoons, and it printed beautifully. It's a very absorbent paper, absorbs the ink very well. And,
And the soaking time is minimal, right? Yeah.
10 minutes in the water.
Right.
10 minutes. And over here, there's Andrew can look at some of the prints I put up on the wall to show you some things I've done in the past. The print on the left is a Frankenthaler print. These prints were done at Tyler Graphics, where I headed the etching department. The one on the left involves silk screen printing, then lithography, and then at the end, after that was all done, I made these plates that fit in, and this one was inked in blue, wiped and rolled on with orange. This is a Joan Mitchell aquatint using a sugar lift process with 3 plates for each panel, yellow,
Wow.
red, and blue. And this is a Helen Frankenthaler aquatint as well.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. I think I've covered everything.
Mark, do we have any questions for Tony?
There was that one, but I think most of the questions were answered. Tony, you did a great job just kind of, yeah, getting everybody's question, even though you kind of knew. You've done this for so long that you know everybody's question ahead of time. So it was great to see the demonstration. Yeah, we're sorry that we had
Also,
some
Tony, you shared a
technical
couple
issues
of
there, but I
secrets.
think we got this.
Yeah.
Shared a couple of secrets, gave you a couple of pointers, which I think is important. The towel thing instead of a blotter, I think that's kind of important.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I mean, Legion Paper sells blotters. I'm not saying don't buy blotters, all right?
No, we do sell blotters.
Blotters are good for some. Well, some artists may not have the space or the cardboard to do this, and this is how they teach it in art schools: putting a print under a blotter with tissue paper on it.
Right.
And it's not the best way. It's not the best way because it ruins the print. I've seen prints ruined with a rippling, like on this one. On this print here, if I was to put tissue paper on this and put it under a blotter under weights, dampness makes tissue paper go wavy. It's not flat, and where the waves of the tissue paper touch the ink under pressure, it removes the ink just slightly enough for you to see it on the print, and the print is no good.
And it would be rejected.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I wouldn't put that out. I wouldn't. I don't show that Robert Kipniss any bad prints. I screen them thoroughly first, you know, because he's a good eye for one thing, right? He's very sharp, and also, if you have an etching which is deeply etched, so it's holding a lot of ink, you can see what's beautiful about Intaglio print. You can see the ink almost in relief on the paper.
Really?
But if you put pressure with I've seen people use lithostones, weights. It crushes the line. It flattens the line.
Right.
And ink is on a tissue paper. Well, most of the ink. I want ink to stay on the print. That's how we do it.
There's a few questions about the ink. I know you mentioned it earlier on the Gamblin. Can you talk a little bit more about the ink?
Well, this is an oil-based ink made in Portland, Oregon. Gamblin make very good oil paints and inks. Another good domestic ink, a little bit less expensive, is Graphic Chemical Black Ink 514. I use that as well. I used to use Charbonnel ink when I was a student in England, a French ink. It's hard to get it imported right now because of tariffs.
Right. Tony, the viscosity of the ink is important. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have to add oil to this, right? A plate oil, because if you make the ink too oily, it will wipe out too easily, right? You won't get a rich print, right? So I use the ink straight from the can.
That's pretty thick. Yeah.
Yeah. I use ink straight from the can. Oh, there's an ink called stiff black ink, the Graphic Chemical make. Then you have to add oil to that. I don't understand the reason for adding oil to a stiff black ink. The other thing I never use is a product called Easy Wipe. They make a product called Easy Wipe. You add it to ink, it makes it easier to wipe. It actually makes it far too easy to wipe. And it tends to want you to overwipe the plate. Overwipe the plate.
Tony, the cleaner that's to your right now, that cloth, what is that again?
Tool. Yeah.
Is that commonplace to be used, or is that something that you only use?
I've been spreading the word on it for a long time. I mean, I have a whole boat of tarlatan, right? In England, they call this scrim. Here they call it tarlatan. And it's quite stiff and scratchy.
Right. Which is what you want to avoid.
Yeah. Also, it's very wearing on the plate. When a plate, like a dry point or a Mesotint, is printed many times, it can wear off with the pressure of just this, wiping. The press doesn't crush the dry point, it's the wiping. And so the Robert Kipniss print, I will have it plated. It's called steel facing, really iron plating. A very fine coat of steel will be put on the plate. And when I use this tweel, which is much cheaper actually than the tarlatan, it does not wear the plate. It does wear the plate.
Mark, I think some of this information we can post as well.
Yeah, so afterwards we will do a follow-up email with links and posts. There's some questions here that we can post. One good question I had.
Contact me. Here's my email address if anyone wants to have further questions.
Yeah, you can't read it too well.
Aquafortis Etch, right?
We'll put it into the follow-up email as well. There you go.
Yeah. This is Latin for acid, aquafortis.
How many prints can you pull on average from a copper plate?
How many prints can I pull from a Mesotint?
Yeah. How many prints from on average?
I can do 70 or 60. And then if the plate shows sign of wear, I get it replated. But for Robert Kipniss right now, I'm doing distance of 20.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's. I know we gone over a little bit. I know we had a little bit technical issues in the beginning, but we'll follow up with an email afterwards with some links to everything and some follow-up questions, also with Tony's email address, so people can contact him directly.
Yeah. Thank you.
We thank you for your time.
Tony, I can't thank you enough. Really, this has been great.
I just want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for all tuning in to this demonstration. And I want to say hello and goodbye to my sisters, Marie and Pat in Scotland, who are watching this right now.
Oh, great. Great. Well, thank you, Tony. Unbelievable. I mean, the process is very, very, very labor intensive, and it's a master printing.
Yeah.
By a master
A lot
printer.
of students. Yeah. I mean, a student yesterday sent me an email, said, my print is buckly, waving on one side. Prints in a frame that are wavy don't look good, right?
No.
Oh. So I said, bring it here. And what I will do, I will, she was using a water-based ink, actually. I think it was Aqua, or it might have been the Welsh ink, whose name I can't recall right now. Caligo ink. So I won't put that paper in the water tray to redampen it. I'll put the print ink face down on a towel, and I'll spray the back with water. So the water absorbs into the paper from the back, not the front. If I do it in the front, it's going to be, the puddles of pigment are going to be around in the margins. And then I will staple it for her. I will staple it half an inch, or a quarter of an inch, she'll lose. I can tear off a quarter of an inch easily. In fact, sometimes I can tear an eighth of an inch. It's hard, but I've done that. Thank you all again.
Tony, thank you again.
Bye, everybody.